of LC, this LC factor will decide the frequency value. Okay, but now how can we use this varactor diode here? The varactor diode can be used to change the frequency of this LC circuit. If you have L inductor and C value constant, then you will get only one frequency from this particular tuning circuit. But if you have this type of circuit which has the varactor diode in it, if you provide this with a VCC, say if you join this with a capacitor, with a fixed capacitor, right? So what will be the frequency here? It will be actually 1 over 2 pi under root of L C plus CT. Why C plus CT? Because whenever the two capacitors are joined in parallel, one can just find out the resultant capacitance just by adding them, and if they are joined in series, we have to apply some different rule. It is actually reverse to the resistance adding, right? So this is actually F, this is actually the frequency which is given by this tuning circuit. Now if this variable capacitor if we vary this power supply, then the variable capacitance will change. And with the variation of the power supply, if the capacitance CT changes, then it changes the frequency consequently. And we can have the change in the frequency, and we can tune that particular device with a particular external frequency. So it can be used as a receiver, it can be used as a transmitter also. So this is the basic principle of the tuning circuits which uses the variable capacitance. Now we can see here the different configurations of the varicap diodes, and this is actually the resistor isolation in the first figure on the left hand side. Resistor is isolated between this type of LC circuit. Another one is the inductor isolation. On the left hand side, in the lower one, there are two varactor diodes which are joined here. Actually these are different combinations, circuit combinations of different components to have different types of results in the tuning circuit. And another one, the last one, is a cumulative circuit of this resistance isolation as well as the varactor diode back-to-back connection. And with this LC circuit, the transistor can be biased and tuned to a particular frequency, right? As I shown you, the frequency which is given in this circuit can be written as 1 over 2 pi under root of L C plus CT. The main advantage is that here we can have the change in the frequency with very least use of very least components. We don't have to use n number of fixed capacitance. We have a variable capacitance. We should just vary the voltage, and we can have n number of capacitance value. So we can have a very large number of frequency tuned in our circuit, right? Now we will move to the next device, which is LED, light emitting diode. Now what is an LED? The basic principle is electroluminescence. Electroluminescence is the principle which says that when electron and hole pair, they are recombined, there will be an emission of the energy, and if that energy is in the form of the light energy, then there will be a light photon which is emitted, and it is called the electroluminescence. LED was first discovered in 1920 by Lassave. Actually he used the LED for his personal use, and some of his colleagues used this LED. But in up to 1962 there were some large inventions were made, and Holonayak in 1962 he developed first visible LED, and he is known as the father of the LED, right? So what is the basic principle? It says that LED emits light in visible region. So that means that there should be one particular lambda for which the LED should emit the light, and it is actually lambda is equal to Hc upon Eg. Now what is Eg? Eg is called the energy band gap that we have studied in the last lecture. The injection electroluminescence is the basic principle of LED. Now we can have the basic construction here. It is nothing but a PN junction diode but it is actually a heteronuclear type, the type PN junction diode. That means the doping concentration is very important when one wants to form the LED. One can have the PN junction diode in the forward bias, as we can see, and whenever whenever the battery is switched off, that means in the zero bias condition, the electrons and holes, they are in their original places. But whenever the battery is switched on, the electron will move from valence band to conduction band, and holes will move from conduction band to valence band. As you can see that in this particular material from which the LED is formed, electrons and holes, they are very nearer to each other, so there is a large possibility of recombination. And when this type of recombination occurs, there is a photon which is emitted in terms of light. And one can see here that there is a very small band gap, small energy band gap. Actually it is a direct band gap material which is used. Now how the LED can be constructed? The LED is constructed here using the diffusion method in the thin film growth technique. I'll show you how the layers can be done. Actually on a particular substrate, it is a metal substrate, and on a metal substrate, the N-type material is grown. On the N-type material, the P-type material is grown through the diffusion technique. And why this metal surface is used, that we will discuss just after some time. This P-type material, when this P-type material is grown and N-type material is grown, here there will be a PN junction which is formed. And this PN junction, at this PN junction, if the forward power supply is applied, there will be a light emission. So this region is called active region. So in this active region, the light emission occurs. Now whenever the light emission occurs, light photons can travel in n directions. So they will travel not up to the P-type material, they will travel up to the N-type material also. So we should and we need the emission of the light in one direction only. So what is the precaution that they have taken? They have actually made the P-type materials width very less. The thickness of the P-type material is very less with comparison to the N-type material. Why? Because whenever this electron passes through the sea of the atoms in the P-type material, it will be colliding with the atoms in the material, and it will be either releasing some energy or some energy is gained, and due to this there will be change in the lambda, in the resultant wavelength, which is not desired. So in order to reduce the probability of this type of collision, the P-type thickness is kept very less than the N-type material. Now another precaution is that in N-type material, the electron will travel and it will be reflected through the metal, and this reflection occurs from the lower substrate, and that's why I said that it is a metal surface. Generally the gold or silver surface is used because of its highly reflective nature. So excuse me. So this type of metal surface is used to direct the photons towards this upper surface, and from this upper surface the light emission occurs. Actually the connections are made here in order to avoid any hazard, electrical hazard. The ohmic contacts are made, and one has taken care that these connections, they are made from the side of the material, so that more region will be open for the light to be emitted. Now one more factor is there, that at the semiconductor air boundary there are chances of total internal reflection. What is total internal reflection? Total internal reflection, it is a phenomenon which is actually an optical phenomenon, and here we are dealing with the light photons, and that's why we have to take care of this phenomenon. It is the reflection if the light ray or say photon is emitted at or is incident at the semiconductor core boundary at an angle which is larger than the critical angle, and due to this the photon will be directed inside the semiconducting material itself. So we should avoid this type of phenomenon, and that's why this semiconducting material is coated with one epoxy region, and due to this this type of TIR, the probability of TIR is reduced, and there is a cap which is highly reflecting, so that the light is light emitted inside the inside this vessel that is directed towards the cap itself. One can see here in the slides that that the semiconductor chip is here at the center of the cap, and one can have the wire bond, the epoxy case is there, the reflective cup that is reflecting the whole light towards one direction, there is actually lead frame and anode for anode and cathode lead, and there is a flat spot, so that this epoxy lens can be can concentrate the whole whole number of photons, and it can have the light which is coming out of that. We can have n number of colors here. The infrared LED, which is not a visible LED, that is the wavelength is greater than 760 nanometer, and the material which is used is GaAs or aluminium gallium arsenide. Now gallium arsenide is the material which is widely used for the construction of this LED. Red color can be constructed, red LED can be constructed using GaAs or GaAsP, gallium arsenide phosphide, or GaP. The orange, which has the wavelength 590 nanometer, the less than lambda, less than 610 nanometer, it can be constructed from GaAsP or GaP. So yellow, the same way, the yellow, green and blue and violet, this type of colors are made with different type of material. Most of them are gallium compounds, and one can also see the voltages here. The voltage at which this LED works, they are ranging from 2 volt to say 4.4 volts. The ultraviolet LED is actually right now a challenge, and it is made up of aluminium, gallium, niobium material, and the white LED is also there. It has a broad spectrum. The blue or UV diode with yellow phosphor, that gives the white LED. Actually this table is taken from Wikipedia. Now we can join this LED in the forward bias voltage. Now why we are joining it initially in the forward bias voltage? Because it has a good range of the voltage. At a smaller voltage it is activated, and one can have the light inside the LED at a particular, say it is V cut-in voltage. When we join this in the forward bias voltage, there is a variable source, and the resistance is there, which is a current limiting resistance, and one can measure the diode voltage here at the across the diode, and one can see the LED symbol. It is actually simple PN junction diode covered with a cap, and 2 rays are coming out of that. So we can have this type of forward bias current characteristics. We can have a simple it is just like a simple PN junction diode as V cut in. After V cut in, the LED starts glowing, and it will be having a larger amount of current with a very small amount of voltage variation. In the reverse bias, there is a sudden breakdown in the LED, and we can see that there is a small saturation current. Actually the reverse bias voltage of the LED is 3 to 10 volt, and 10 milliampere current is the reverse saturation current. So one can absolutely say that LEDs should not be reverse bias at all, because it will lead to the breakdown of the LED, and it will destroy the devices. Now we are mostly concerned with the forward bias of the LED, and we can join it in the circuit in the experiment. Now I'll show you. As we have seen in the last lecture, we had used the breadboard. Those who have not seen the last lecture can see here that it is a it has n number of ports which are acting like a terminal. I'm just having a small repetition here. N number of ports are there in one column on this broader panel. They are connected in series. There is no connection in between these two panels, in between these two lines on the columns. And here on the thinner panel one can see that there are again n number of ports, and these are connected in series from starting from 1 to n. Okay, and again in the column these 5 are in series. Now if when we join this the circuit on the breadboard, we can mount the LED on the circuit on the breadboard. We will take first the red LED. How can we identify the LED? You can see that in the LED there is a larger leg. Here you can see that this leg is the larger leg, and this leg is the anode of the LED, right? So when we mount it, we should take care that it should be mounted in a proper way, and particularly when we join the power supply with the LED, we should first check that whether it is mounted in a proper way or not, because if it is connected in the reverse bias, then we will destroy the LED. Now we are joining one carbon resistor. One can find out the values using very well known formula, BB Roy goes to Bombay via gateway, right? You must be used to this formula. Now when I join this power supply, actually I have a constant power supply. When I join this power supply positive to the resistance, it will go to the LED positive as resistance another end, and LED positive, they are connected in series with each other due to the breadboard principle. When I join this, I'll have the LED lighting, right? If I join the variable power supply, then I can have initially LED is not lighting at a particular voltage which is given in the LED data sheet. LED will start a small glow, and thereafter the light will grow, and this is the maximum glow. Actually we are providing a 9 volt power supply, constant power supply, and that's why the LED is glowing. Now apart from this, one can have a green LED, green light LED also. As we have seen in the last slide,